we're going to be taking notes from all the points that Professor Larry will be sharing with us. So you want to ensure, take notes, you want to ensure that you have an expectation. And I trust that by the end of this event, your expectation will not be cut short. Now, before we delve in, I would also love to state that during the session, if you have any question, please do well to note it down. We'll give a floor for question and answer where you can get to ask Professor Larry questions about communication, how you can better your conversation skills, and a session for Q&A generally. So please, if you know that you have any question during the course of the event, do well to note it down. So I'm going to check okay, I can see some responses. Hi, Sage says, I'm Yemi from Lagos. Nice to meet you. Hi, Zoe from Lagos. Hi, Daniel from Lagos. Hi, Peace from Abuja. So to the rest of the people joining us in, you can go to the comments, write your name and where you're joining us from. Please do well to take screenshots during the course of the event and send to your friends, people you know that they are meant to be on this call, to join the call immediately. Do well to take screenshots of sessions or things that the Professor Larry says that resonates with you and post on your Instagram story so that other people can also join in, so that people can know that we are live. Once again, welcome to the Art of Conversation. No, do know that before you leave this event, you will be equipped with the skills that you need to leverage it is that I want to make welcome as speaker for today. Please join me as I make welcome Professor Larry. So please join me, make welcome Professor Larry.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Mirabel, thank you very much for doing such an amazing job. Thank you very much, everyone, for showing up this night. Please, I want to confirm that you can hear me. Can you please go to the chat and type in if you can actually hear me? Oh, great. Fantastic. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'm so glad that you can hear. And thank you again for coming out today to be part of this program. So right now, just like Mirabel has explained, today we're looking at leveraging effective communication for career growth. And we are focusing on the art of conversation, the art of conversation. This is something you'll find very, very important and very, very useful. So please pay attention and be very, very attentive. Thank you so much. I can see those who are saying they can hear me. I'm so glad you can. Thank you so much. So at this point, I'd like to share my screen with you so that you can see what I will be presenting. All right. In just a moment, you'll see my screen now. Okay. Please, can you confirm that you can see my screen displayed? If you can you please type in yes? Oh, great. Thank you very much. I'm very glad you can see it. Okay, thank you. So let's go on to full screen now. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you. So we're, as a kind of introduction, I want you to just imagine for a moment that you have a car and you drive the car anywhere, and in fact everywhere, but you don't have any particular destination in mind. And then imagine that after going through the entire day driving the car from one location to another, you actually don't have a recollection at all of where you have been. Now let's take it another step. Now imagine that you picked somebody else along the way, and the person was a passenger on that trip. And the person did not know the destination of the journey, and the person was dropped randomly along the road. I want you to think about that entire scenario. It is not the best that anyone would desire. First of all, think about the waste of time, the waste of energy, the waste of resources, moving around without knowing where exactly you're going. Interestingly, that is what happens when we talk about conversation, because conversation is like a vehicle that helps to move us from one destination to another. The interesting thing about it now, unlike a vehicle where you can drive alone, you actually don't have a conversation alone. So which means that you are taking somebody on a journey when you're having a conversation. And unfortunately, when the conversation is heading nowhere and you are not arriving anywhere, you're actually carrying somebody else along with you. So that is why it's important to always think about conversation anytime you're having one, that you are on a journey. Where are you heading exactly? And who are you taking with you? Now, somebody is wondering, why are we having this conversation in the first place? What is the problem we're trying to solve? Very quickly, I'll take you through the problem that birthed the conversation we're having this night about conversation. Very interesting, really. Approximately 75% of individuals are said to have anxiety of public speaking. I think by now that's a general knowledge. About 20 years ago, when I started to get interested in public speaking, I learned that majority of people would rather die than speak publicly. But in my mind, I thought that it would have improved with time. So you can just imagine my surprise when I found out that as of 2023, the data is still correct, that people still have anxiety of public speaking. So that is part of why we are talking here today. That's why we're having this webinar on conversation. Somebody may say that, but we're talking about public speaking. This is conversation. Talking to one or two persons, it is true. But anything that you speak outside yourself has actually become public. So that becomes worthy of attention. What again is a problem we are trying to solve? It has also been discovered from the source that I have indicated on the screen there, that a significant number of people try to avoid difficult conversations at work. Remember that our seminar is about improving your job performance, making your life better at work, having better opportunity to grow. So what happens when you're dealing with that difficult colleague that you cannot speak to, when you're dealing with that difficult boss that you cannot interact with, when you're dealing with that difficult classmate that you just feel that there are some conversations you should have and you are not able to have it? So quite a number of persons are afraid. Why are they afraid? Number one, they don't want to damage relationship because they feel that if I say I don't like the way he talks to me, if I say I don't appreciate the way I'm addressed, perhaps it can damage our relationship. So a lot of people would rather bear and condone these things than have the conversation. So that has become a problem. Taking a step further, 1/3 of British adults find it challenging to initiate conversation with a stranger. I don't know the data for Nigeria, but I would think that it will be around that too. It has been noted that quite a number of persons, when they are traveling, they will prefer to carry a book and pretend to be reading just because they don't want to enter a conversation with whoever is sitting next to them. Because after saying hello, hi, hello, how are you doing? Fine. The next thing is, what else do we say? It becomes awkward. Then all of a sudden, you just prefer to just look at your book and pretend to be reading. Quite a number of persons walk around with earbuds, pretending to be listening, but they actually are not listening. They just want to keep conversations out. When you hear me listening to music, perhaps you'll just leave me alone. So basically, quite a number of persons are afraid of having conversations with strangers. But if we're talking about the workplace, if we're talking about businesses, how can you avoid having conversations with strangers? Talk about marketing your ideas to people. Talk about pitching. Talk about interacting with new persons at work. Some people keep to themselves and they are considered snobs. And it is not so. They just feel insecure having conversations with people. And when they keep to themselves, people think that this person is being snobbish. This can actually affect chances at work or in any business environment. So that is another reason we're having this webinar tonight. And the last point here is that it has been noted that Gen Zs experience anxiety when they are making formal phone calls. They would rather text or use social media. I had an interesting conversation with one of my students several years ago. She had graduated for a while, and I saw her, and we were just talking, and okay, just a minute. I got a message about a slide. Let me just quickly check it out. Okay, so you're still seeing the cover page. Okay, all right. Sorry for that. Please confirm if you can see the current page now. Can you see the current page? Oh, great. All right. Maybe I'll just stick with this. Oh, beautiful. Thank you very much. I tried to maximize the page, so apparently that's made it impossible for you to see it. So I'll just work with this. All right. So, so you find out that a lot of Gen Zs are apprehensive. So I was having a conversation with this young person, and I asked, so how about your friends? And she said, oh, they're fine. I said, are you in touch with them? She said, yes. I said, but can you imagine? They're trying to call me. And I asked, so what's wrong with that? She said, when they call, I have to pick the call and have a conversation. What is wrong with texting? So at that moment, I realized that there is a problem. We have gotten to a point where we are not used to immediate response to situations anymore. We'd rather want to see the message. A lot of times, read it without anybody knowing that we have read it. We want enough time to process the information, put our thoughts together, and then respond. We don't like immediate response. We don't like responding at the spur of the moment. And actually, that is removing part of our skills as individuals. So we are losing the ability to communicate effectively. Now let us move on very quickly. What is conversation? What is conversation? So now that we know that a lot of people are losing the ability to converse, you're standing with somebody and it's almost like there's a brick wall between you. You cannot connect because one way or the other, you feel apprehensive, you feel scared. So what exactly is conversation? Here, according to Cambridge Dictionary, it's a talk between two or more people with feelings and ideas being expressed. You also get to ask questions and answer questions and so on and so forth. I have tried to put this together in a construct to help us understand it. Now, imagine the two people standing there. When you are having a conversation, you are not just throwing around words. Remember that we said at the beginning that conversation is like a vehicle that carries you from one destination to another. Now, imagine a vehicle that is packed with thoughts, that is packed with feelings that is packed with ideas. You put all of those together. So when you're communicating with somebody, your emotion is going along with it. Your ideas are going along with it. And along with that, you're asking questions, you are responding. If you see the direction of the arrows, you'll find out that they point in both directions. In other words, it is an exchange. So we don't have a unidirectional communication, we have a bidirectional. As a matter of fact, when it comes to conversation, it is a continuum. It keeps going round and round and round. So that is what we want to talk about today. But I have some questions for you. When we talk about conversation, can you just pause for a moment and ask yourself, when CEOs are together having a conversation, what are they talking about? When you have presidents, 2, 3, 4 more of them seated together and talking, what do you think they are talking about? Conversation begins from the mind. The quality of what is in the mind determines the quality of the conversation. If the conversation is meaninless, if it is ordinary, if it has no impact at all, it is because of the thought process of the people that are involved in that conversation. So when you think like a CEO, when you think like a president, when you think that your thoughts matter, your thoughts are important, then you are deliberate about how you communicate them. There was a very interesting experience I had some years ago. I attended a conference. And while we were returning from the conference, I was in the company of 2 CEOs. And we were getting ready to board our flight. But while we were waiting for the flight, they were just having a casual conversation. But what they considered to be a casual conversation was a business conversation to me. Because after saying, hello, how are you? How's your family? The next thing they were talking about very casually is their businesses. And they were talking about what they do to compensate their staff, how they improve deliverables, how they look at KPIs. These are just casual conversations. I assure you that listening to them, I felt like taking a pen and writing, but I would look out of place because what they were talking about was normal to them. But to me, it was like a masterclass. I was hearing 2 people in the industry talk about what was meaningful to them. So imagine 2 presidents sitting together. After asking, how are you doing? How is your family? Perhaps they will start to talk about governance. They'll start to talk about state matters. Interestingly, if they are gossiping about another president, which means that they are talking about economy, governance, and so on and so forth. If they are teasing each other perhaps about government decisions. What will be alien to somebody else who is listening? So what am I saying? What fills your mind is what filters out of your conversation. So we can say safely that from the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. So we can say very comfortably that it is what fills your heart that jumps out anytime you have the opportunity to speak. So when your heart is full, you need somebody to talk to. So imagine that somebody is frustrated about the economy of the nation. It is burning so deeply. No matter what you say in a conversation, the person will bring it back. Do you see what's happening in our nation? Do you see how everything is happening? Doesn't it just make you feel mad? Are you not angry at the government? If you change the topic, the person brings it back again. Why? That is what that person is full of. Now, when you have an opinion, you express it at every opportunity. Imagine that you're very opinionated about maybe an artist, a musician, about anybody at all. The moment there is a conversation about it, the opinions start to reflect in what you're saying. When you have an attitude, whether good or bad, it colors what you say. That is why some people appear to be consistently negative. You can spend just 5 minutes with someone and you can tell what kind of person that individual is as a result of what they are saying. It is the attitude is coloring what they are saying. And number 4, when you know You know, and it shows. But when you don't, it becomes also obvious in conversations. Have you seen cases where people argue so vehemently on something they know nothing about? Somebody will tell you the reason why a president made a certain decision, and they were not there when it was being deliberated. They did not know the basis for it. I have seen some things in the media that for whatever reason, I had an idea of the story behind it, that I could not believe the extent to which people took it because they had no clue. So people argue about things they know nothing about. So you can just imagine somebody sitting and just listening to you, and you are speaking about things and you don't even have an idea about it. So even ignorance shows from conversation. That is why I like the quote by Mark Twain, which says, "A man's character may be learned from the adjectives which he habitually uses in conversation." So basically, you don't need hours to understand who a person is. Just listen to the person for a few minutes, and you can easily get what kind of person that individual is. Now somebody is wondering, so why exactly are we here? Are you trying to say now that conversations must be mechanical? I must think about every word that comes out of my mouth. Now I cannot be casual, I cannot joke, I cannot relax anymore. No, that's not what we're saying here. But what I'm saying is this: you have to be more conscious of what you say. You have to be more deliberate about what you say. Because whether or not you are aware of it, what you say makes a lasting impression on the person listening to you. One way or the other, it sticks. Now, let me give you this scenario. You're standing next to someone, and the person says, me, I can't see money without picking it up. If I see 5,000 naira on the table, you look in the next direction, it is gone. And you joke. It's laugh. I mean, you're just joking. It's a joke. If you have money on that table, what will you do? You will systematically place your hand on it and make the money disappear and go right into your pocket. Why? From that joke, you are sensing that the kind of person I'm talking to is the type who has no problem in making money disappear. Now, from that conversation, you are being judged. So what are we saying? Even when you are joking, people believe that some element of truth exists in the joke. For instance, there are things you would not say because of the kind of person you are. There are some slangs you would never use. There are some profanities that will never come out of your mouth because of the kind of person you are. So if you joke with those things, it defines the level of person you are and the elasticity you operate within. So what we're here to talk about today is the fact that you need to become more conscious when you are having conversations with friends, with family, particularly in work environment. The people you interact with matters and how you interact with them. Now let's quickly run through some misconceptions as far as conversation is concerned. Some people believe that a conversationalist must be able to talk a lot. That is wrong. The reason is that the more you speak, the more the likelihood of error. So you should not speak too much. So that somebody can overspeak does not mean that the person is a good conversationalist. We'll learn more about that later. The second one is that you must always have something smart to say. And you see, this is where a lot of people run into trouble. They want to sound smart. So sometimes they make witty statements that are sometimes not sensible. Some people share jokes that are not funny just because they want to speak. And they feel that, I want to seem like I can think so quickly on my feet. When you have something to say, please say it. When you don't have anything to say, it is better to be silent. That is why a lot of times the conversations we have in meetings, when we ask for people to share their ideas and somebody raises a hand and you say, okay, yes, can you please share your idea? I say, I want to repeat or emphasize what the previous speaker has spoken. And after speaking through, you cannot hear any new thought coming through. Now, that is someone that is just trying to make an impression without actually having the substance to share. So no, being a good conversationist does not mean that you always have something smart to say. There are some times that you need to be quiet. And that leads us very seamlessly into the next point. Silence is not awkward. All right? A lot of times people feel that when we are quiet, when we're silent in a conversation, it feels awkward. Somebody should say something. Silence is part of conversation. The next one is that good conversations happen naturally. You will be surprised how untrue this is. Now, there are some people that find it easy to converse. But when we're talking about good conversation, it is a skill that must be learned. Because not only are you able to speak, you're able to understand the person you are speaking to. So it doesn't have to be natural. Somebody says, I am not naturally gifted in conversation. There is nothing like that. What you'll say is that you have not taken time to develop the skill. And that is why we're here today, so that you can actually develop the skill. The next one says that debating and arguing makes a conversation more engaging. No, please. There are some people that are always argumentative. No matter what the conversation is, they will bring it into some level of argument. You can't say anything without them bringing argument into it. An example I like to give is that, some people are so argumentative that even when you say that water is good, they will say, which one? Is it bottled water or sachet water or tap water? Which one are you talking about? Because you have to be specific. You will find yourself defending yourself when you are with them. It can be really, really stressful. So the moment you get there, you find out that people start to avoid this individual. They see the person coming from one direction, they turn in the other direction, they say, I don't have time for argument today. Argument drives people away. It does not make for good conversation. The next one is that introverts are not good at conversation. You will be surprised that a lot of good conversationalists are introverts. Why? Because they pay attention and they are deliberate. They measure their words, and how they present themselves is very, very specific. So it's not about the multitude of words you speak. It's about the specific thing you say. And the next point here says body language doesn't matter much in a conversation. This, again, is a misconception. Because when you are having a conversation, it doesn't only have to do with your mouth. It has to do with your entire package. I had an interesting experience several years ago. I visited a friend, and my thought was that I don't want to overstay my welcome. If I stay too long, the person can become bored of my presence. So somewhere in my mind, subconsciously, I gave myself a timeline that by this time I'll leave so that I don't bore the person. What I did not realize was that as we were having the conversation, I kept looking at the time. What brought me to myself was the individuals just told me, if you really don't want to be here, you can leave anytime. What happened was that every time I looked at the time, the person looked at me. So it was looking like I was fulfilling an obligation by being there. But in my mind, I was trying not to overstay my welcome. In the mind of that individual, I was measuring the time that, okay, I think I've stayed enough. Now I can leave. So can you see where the confusion comes in? So when you are having a conversation, people are watching you. They are looking at your face. They are looking at your body movement. This is not mechanical. The way the human mind is created, we pick information without even knowing we are picking it. But all of this information go into our mind to form opinion. So that is why somebody says, I don't like that person. And they can't even explain why. Or I really like that person. And they can't put their hand on the reason. They have picked up a lot of cues. And these cues have gone into their mind to create a picture from which they make decisions. So body language means a lot. Now, let us talk about types of conversation. Types of conversation. At this point, let me please pause for a moment. And I'm going to need someone, a volunteer, to have a conversation with me. You'll be on hot seat, trust me, but it will be worth it. So if I can just have someone just go to the chat and just type in, I volunteer. I would ask you to unmute when I get to that point, and we'll just have a very quick conversation just for me to demonstrate a point that I have. Oh, beautiful. Okay. Andoloi has volunteered. Thank you very much for taking up this challenge. Beautiful. So I'll come back to you on that. So let's quickly talk about types of conversation. Types of conversation. Oh my, now I have quite a number of volunteers. Thank you so much. That's very kind of you. I will perhaps only be able to take one or maybe two, but we'll see. Let's see how the time goes. All right, that's amazing. Thank you very much. Now let's quickly look at types of conversation. The first one is casual conversation. Now, casual conversation is a type you'll call a conversation without an agenda. I just meet someone maybe by the roadside, and I just say, hello, how are you? How's the family? And so on and so forth. Now, that's what you'll consider as casual. But interestingly, even casual conversations have a purpose: to bond, to connect. So you should not ask someone, how are you doing, without being interested in the answer. So casual conversation is an opportunity for you to get to know someone. As a matter of fact, you must always begin with casual conversation before you move on to more serious conversations. So casual conversation is a very important one. The next one is informational conversation. Now, please pay attention to this one because it is very important. A lot of times when you are having a conversation, you don't realize that you are sharing information. So sometimes you are sharing personal information and you don't realize it. And somebody else is gaining access to that information. Some other times you are the one fishing for information, and the other individual may not even know. So that is why we have to be very deliberate about conversation. Several years ago, the son of one of the former presidents of Nigeria, at the time the father was still a sitting president, was on a flight, and he was having a casual, in quotes, conversation with an individual sitting next to him, talking about the nature of the country and talking about the fact that there were thieves in the father's cabinet. Unfortunately, the next day, that was the headline of newspapers. He was not aware that it was a journalist he was having a conversation with. So while in his mind he was having a casual conversation, the journalist was having an informational conversation. Because when you get to a certain level in your life, you can't have casual conversation anymore. It becomes informational because anything you say becomes authority that some people pick. So please pay attention to this when you go into the work environment. When you want to grow your career, when you're talking to business partners, you have to measure your words, because there are things that you can say that will be used against you. Because now you represent a platform. Whatever it is you say, it is no longer your personal opinion. It becomes an opinion of the organization. Now, moving on to the next one, persuasive conversation. We do this more than we know. We bargain. We talk about things. We decide what we want to do. We decide how we want to do it. And one way or the other, we shift positions. So when you find somebody persuading you or just sharing information that makes you change your mind, you have been involved in a persuasive conversation. I listened to Zig Ziglar several years ago, and he was talking about an interesting experience he had. And he said that he was with, he wanted to go out to go and do something. And his daughter said, Daddy, I would like to come with you. And he said, no, you can't come. And she said, if I don't come, I'll feel lonely. He said, but the house is full of people. He said, I feel lonely for you. He said that touched his heart. Instantly, he agreed that she could come along. Now, that was persuasion. The child wanted to go out. The father felt the child should not go. And the child says, the house can be full of a lot of people, but I will miss you specially because I would rather spend time with you. And the father was persuaded. Every single time, several times during the day, we have conversations that involve persuasion. So you have to be conscious of it. Because unfortunately, there is also the manipulation perspective of it, particularly in work environments, where you can be made to do things that you would rather not do. And you are not conscious that somebody is guilt-tripping you or somebody is just pushing you in a certain direction and you find yourself doing it. The next one is instructional conversation. Here, it's very important that you pay attention because some people are lecturing those who should be lecturing them. Now, please listen to that again. Some people are lecturing the people that should be lecturing them. There are people who know more than you. You have the opportunity of interacting with them. Instead of listening to what they have to say, you are telling them what you know. It becomes a problem. You need to be instructed. You need to be guided. Instructional conversations. You pick information. They guide you in certain steps. I find myself doing this a lot of times, and it doesn't matter with who. I have had conversations with my colleagues sometimes that they mention something that caught my attention. It can be a blog they read. It can be a podcast they listened to. It can be a process that they mentioned. I make a mental note. And the moment I leave them, I write it down and find out more about it. Sometimes I even ask them, can you tell me more about that? Can you tell me how to do this? Sometimes I do it with my students too. They mention something and I am curious about it. I ask more questions. What you don't know, like the Chancellor of Covenant University, Dr. David Oyedepo will say, what you don't know, you don't know. What you won't learn, you won't know. And that thing that you don't know, you will suffer for it. So you must be ready to be instructed. It is very important. The next one is problem-solving conversation. When you are having conversations, sometimes you solve problems without realizing it. An instance of this was that I was serving at the Africa Leadership Development Center of Covenant University, and we're working on an online course. I was setting the questions, sending them to a colleague who was uploading them on the portal. I will set the questions. The questions will not come with numbers, and then I will number every single one of them from 1 to maybe 60, 120 thereabout, and then send it to him. One day we were having a casual conversation, and as we were speaking, I looked at his laptop and I saw the questions there, and I did not see any number there. And I asked him, what happens to the numbers? He said, I have to take time to remove all the numbers. And I said, can you imagine? I put the numbers there because I thought it was easier for you. And he said, I removed the numbers because I didn't want to bother you. That conversation solved a lot of problems because setting the question was a lot of work. Now putting the numbers was another level of work. From that conversation, we solved a critical problem. And like that, it was gone. Then we have conflict resolution. For someone to mediate in a conflict, it is important that you're objective. We can talk next about networking. You go to events and you connect with people. When you network, what is happening is that you are sharing values. So within 5 minutes of having a conversation, I have listened to what you do that I can find useful, and I've shared with you what I do that you can find useful. Like that, we are bonded and we have formed a relationship. Interview conversations. I like to put it this way. If you're looking for a job and you were ever invited for an interview, it means that you are considered a suitable candidate. The moment you walk into that room, consider yourself having 100% mark. When they are now having the conversation with you, they are measuring the fit, the value fit, the compatibility. Can this person actually fit us? So it is either they are maintaining the initial score they gave you or it is dropping gradually. So if somebody goes to an interview and does not get a job, it is because you have undersold yourself through conversation. You have presented yourself lesser than what they expected you to be. Because in their mind, you can as well be the candidate. And the last point I have here is decision making. When we have conversations, it aids in decision making. So we can make decisions better by just sharing thoughts with people. Now, very quickly in the next few minutes, I'd like to just go into a conversation with my first volunteer. That's Andrew. Please, would you like to unmute your mic so that we can just have a demonstrative conversation? Now, this is what is going to happen. After this conversation, I'd like people to go to the chat and tell me your impression about that conversation. What do you think is the situation? All right. So please, can you unmute? All right. Are you ready?
Yes, I am. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. How are you doing today?
I'm good. I've had a great day. Rested quite well. How are you, sir?
I'm doing very well. Thank you very much. So can you tell me, how's your day been?
My day has been a lot. I'm in my final year right now, so I've been collecting data.
Are you trying to tell me that your day's been a lot? I mean, the first thing that you will say is that you're having, there's been a lot, you're dealing with a lot of things. Do you think that's the best way to start a conversation?
Well, I think it's honest. It has been a good day, but it has been a day that has taxed me, both in my mind and my body.
Sorry, pardon me. Sorry. What's your name again? Did you tell me your name at the beginning? Can you please tell me your name?
My name is Ondulahi Ajonye.
Okay, yeah, thanks. Please, go on.
Okay, so my day was tasking, but in a good way. I collected data from a school, Covenant University Secondary School.
Sorry.
Today.
When we're talking about conversation, like I said, it comes from the mind, the way you speak and all of that. Can you tell me, where does your dad work and how much does he make, really?
Sorry? My dad?
Where does your dad work? How much does he make?
Can I ask why you're asking that question?
You see, it's important to understand this kind of thing because, you see, you get an insight into the kind of person you're talking to by this kind of information. But, never mind. Just carry on. So you were saying?
I think I've lost my first train of thoughts, but it's quite funny that you believe that you get an insight into who I am based on who my dad is. That's a very interesting perspective.
Sorry, where are you from exactly? Okay, don't bother. Don't worry about that question. You see, for someone like me who has traveled around the world, to China, to Beijing, to all of those places, you get to meet people and you have some kind of conversations with them, and you get to operate and converse at a certain level. But when you meet people who perhaps have never left their village, sometimes it can be tough conversing. But sorry, pardon me. Just carry on with your conversation.
I don't think this conversation can continue.
Oh, seriously? Why?
You're not interested in my point of view. The person I'm conversing with is not interested in my point of view at all. Not in my day, not even my family at all. So
all right, thank you very much. You've done an amazing job. Please, can you show some love and
thank you.
Please, can you just show some love and show some icons and just appreciate her for me? I am sure you did not see that coming, did you?
Sir, I did not see that coming at all.
Okay. Now, really, sincerely, I don't think there can be any conversation that can be that bad, really. But I have combined a lot of things that are no-nos for conversation. So many things that should not be done in a conversation. I have rolled them all together in one. So can you please go to the chat and just type in whatever you saw was wrong with that conversation. Everyone, just go there and just type in, this is what I think is wrong with that conversation. Just type it in. Yes. Okay. AY said, never left their village. Okay. Akura said that you kept interrupting now. Okay. Thank you very much. Asage said no mutual flow of interest. Beautiful. Thank you. Nkem said she started the conversation on a negative tone. Okay. All right. Ayomide said you were too nosy. Seriously. Okay. Tolu Animi said that, okay. I think it was one-sided conversation. Good. AJ said that the prejudice, the lack of listening, as well as the interruptions, very good. Ayomide said that cutting in as she spoke, beautiful. And Senpai said that no interest in what she was saying, very good, thank you. And he said you didn't give her room to speak, good. Too many questions without having our answer completely understood. That's Wufai, thank you very much. David, you asked questions I believe were too personal for a first conversation. Absolutely correct. Emmanuel, not interested in what she had to say. Good. Adeyemi, you didn't listen to her. Yes. She was being belittled. That was Stephen. Very good. Nuoma said, I think you were too impatient. Good. Chidi said, there were a lot of interruptions. Okay, I'll just read a couple more. John Gold said, you just wanted to make your opinion known. Very good. And Lua Jomilo just said, a lot questions were not necessary and were ill-timed. Beautiful. Thank you so much. I'm seeing the comments coming. Thank you very much. These are very, very good points, and you are all very correct. You have mentioned all the things that are wrong with the conversation. Interestingly, it may not be a single conversation that has all of this. All right? But none of this is acceptable in any conversation. When you want to talk to people, you don't interrupt. I was judgmental. In other words, belittling her. And then I started to talk about traveling around the world, which was egocentric, self-serving. All right? You will notice I asked at some point, sorry, what did you say your name was? I was forgetting basic information. I was distracted. So these are things that should not be in a conversation. Now, you do any of this and you are wondering why people don't enjoy speaking with you. There is a problem. There is a problem. Now, let us race through and conclude our presentation today so that I can quickly take some questions. Let's race towards the end now. All right. So to resolve the problem I just created, and by the way, I love the response and the interaction. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for sending in your response. It's so beautiful, very interactive. I love it. Now, I'm solving the problem I created by introducing what I call the Passel conversation technique. The Passel conversation technique. P stands for positivity, A, attentiveness, S, sensitivity, and L, listenability. Listenability. Now, let's take a closer look at them. We are beginning to wind down this conversation now. And I want you to please pay attention to every one of this. When you want to have a conversation with people, you must be positive. Part of being positive means you are open. You are not judging someone. You are open. You are accommodating. There are some people that when you see them, you can't walk up to them to have a conversation because you feel that you'll be rejected, you'll be snubbed. So you must show that you are accommodating. There must be pleasantness, cheerfulness in the conversation. When people speak with you, they should leave you smiling as a result of how much they enjoyed having a conversation with you. Optimism is another one. There are people that the moment they start to talk, they talk about how bad their boss is, how difficult their office is, how stressed their life is, how it's almost like their village people have come looking for them, how their entire life is scattered. Now, there is a problem. Because you see, in a place of work, in the school, wherever you are, when people have a conversation with you, they want to see the positivity, the can-do spirit. So they raise a point to say, that is not possible. That cannot be done. There is another one, in this country, it is impossible. After a while, they leave you out of the conversation if they need someone who has a positive mind. The next one is confidence. Some people, the moment they start a conversation, it's obvious that they are intimidated. So it's important that you have confidence. Now let's move on to A. Remember, we're talking about parcel, and P is positivity. A is attentiveness. Be genuinely curious. When you ask a question, please listen to hear what the person has to say. Interestingly, what the person says may trigger another question, but it is from the way you have listened, that is how you have brought the question. Questions like, that is interesting. So you are from Lagos. I hear that people from Lagos are quite nice. Be pleasant, all right? Be genuinely curious and let the person speak more to you. Don't be critical. Don't put people on hot spots just because they want to speak to you. And then pausing when you converse is very important, because pausing means you are listening to the other person speak. And then the speed of response does not necessarily mean intelligence. There are some times that you have spoken first and we now think later. So when you are asked a question, feel free to pause for a few seconds to put your thought together. Now, I usually say it this way, that I believe that everyone has some level of stupidity in them. And I sincerely mean this with all sense of respect. Why I'm saying this is that when someone asks you a question, the first answer that comes to your mind is likely to be a very stupid one. Then your mind starts to filter, come on now, how can you think like that? So after processing it, the intelligent one is the one you speak out. Why do you say people are childish? Because children say what they are thinking. It just comes out of their mouth without them processing it. And you listen to it and you say, come on now, how can somebody say this? So when you find an adult speak without processing the thoughts, you say they are being childish. So pausing is perfectly okay. But of course, we are not talking about a 10-minute pause to just answer a simple question. The next one is sensitivity. Be considerate of the person. Don't make somebody feel uncomfortable. Be gracious towards people. Sometimes somebody is so interested in pointing out that somebody else is wrong. We may be telling the story about maybe what is happening in the US, what is happening in Canada, and somebody is speaking authoritatively and is wrong. Be gracious enough to keep quiet. You don't have to be the one to point out that this person is wrong. Now, I am not saying let wrong information pass. I am only saying that there are nice ways to call attention to it. There is a way you can say that it will show as though you are trying to show that you know, and you water down the other person. They will not like you for it. If your boss is wrong, will you raise your hand in the board meeting and say, sorry, sir, you are wrong? There are ways to handle this. Communication comes with discretion. The next one is sincerity. It's important that you are authentic. A young person walked up to a great author some time ago and said, trying to bond because he wanted to network. He said, I love your work. Your books are just wonderful. And the man said, which one? And then there was radio silence because this individual had not read a single book. So why flatter? At the end of the day, don't say things that are not true just to impress, because you will be caught in a very, very difficult situation. The next one, of course, is appreciation. It is important that you are open to appreciate people. Pay people genuine compliment. Be charitable enough to appreciate people, to rate people higher than yourself. It makes people feel comfortable around you, not you lauding yourself above every other person. And the last one is listenability. In other words, people find it easy to listen to you. What does this mean? The person that other people enjoy listening to has to be someone that is not serious all the time. Now, please listen. I am not saying that you should not be serious-minded all the time. I'm only saying that a serious level of comfort is important. When people work with you, it is important that they should not be as though they are working on eggs. Share some jokes, laugh, be cordial, and let people laugh consistently around you. It diffuses the tension. It makes the environment easier to relate with. Now, please listen. Humor can also be delicate. There are times when people share humors that are distasteful and can end up offending rather than causing people to like you. So please be careful the kind of humor you share. The next one is maturity. When you're having conversations, it is not everything that you notice that you pick up. Pay attention, be matured. If somebody is not charitable towards you, you don't have to return it. You don't have to return the favor. Just be calm, just be cool. Selflessness is important. Modesty. Even if I have traveled the world, like we had in that conversation, I should not throw it in somebody's face just to make the person feel lesser. Recall that in that conversation, I asked her about our village. And then I talked about me traveling around the world. So think about international versus localizing somebody else. It is not modest at all. Another thing is brevity. Brevity is very important in conversation. Don't go into long stories that bore people. You just notice that people switch off. Please pay attention. Sometimes when you are speaking and you look around and nobody is listening, just stop. Don't feel bad about it. Just stop. Sometimes when you are speaking and another conversation comes on and takes people's attention, divert and listen to what they are saying. Some people will insist on bringing the conversation back just to make their point, whereas the train of that conversation has left already. And also know when people are tired of a conversation, and please let them rest. I had a very interesting experience several years ago. Someone visited me at home. I was still a bachelor. I was not married. And after a very long day, a very stressful day, I was home and I wanted to sleep. And this person was having a conversation with me. I was exhausted, but he kept on talking. I was trying not to yawn visibly so that it doesn't seem like I was insulting him. I didn't want to seem disrespectful, but he kept on talking. It got to a point I could not hold it. I practically yawned and he did not notice. The most amazing part of it was that I just came to myself and I discovered I had dozed off for a while. Would you believe it? He did not notice I slept off. He was still talking. At that point, I said, you know what? Can we please go and sleep? I am tired. Brevity is very important. You must not be speaking while people are done listening. It is very important that you pay attention to that. Now, let us quickly have a recap of all the things we have talked about. We have talked about the fact that we have defined conversation, and we have talked about what conversation is. Exchange between two or more people. We have talked about conversation originating from the mind. So the quality of your thought is the quality of your presentation. So which means that if you want to think better, read better, expose yourself to valuable information, then you can discuss intelligently with people. I don't watch football, but sometimes when there is a match, I may read about it, particularly if I'm going to be around my friends who do. And we have this conversation and the interaction so that we can move along. So please expose yourself to valuable information. All right, please let me pause. I just saw a message now. Please, can you confirm that you can still hear me? They just sent a message now that I cannot hear me. Please, can you confirm that you can still hear me? Please type in yes if you can still hear me. Oh, beautiful. Thank you very much. So I think perhaps that is a network. Thank you. Oh, fantastic. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I appreciate the feedback. So we have moved from definition to talking about how important your mind is. Then we move on to misconception, what they are, so that you can know if you're operating under misconceptions. And then we talked about the types of conversation. And ladies and gentlemen, we concluded with the parcel conversation technique. We've done quite a lot today. But you know, if somebody deserves the credit, it is not me for speaking. It is you for listening through all of these things that we have talked about. So I commend you for your patience, for your attentiveness, for listening, for us to have covered this much within the time that we have. I would like to conclude with this quote by Henry, and it says, "A single conversation across the table with a wise man is better than 10 years mere study of books." 10 years mere study of books. So sometimes you just need to have a conversation with a wise person, and that conversation can turn your life around. Your time is too valuable to spend having conversations that are driving around and yet taking you nowhere, that will leave you stranded, and then you will not know where you are. Can you start to be conscious about the conversations you have now? Can you start to be deliberate about the conversation? And if you do, you'll have growth in your career and your life generally. Thank you so much for listening. It's been a wonderful time interacting with you right now. And I believe that we'll be taking a few questions. So I'd like to hand over back to Mirabel to take it over from here. Thank you so much for listening. I'll stop sharing my screen now.
Thank you so much, sir. We sincerely appreciate. I must say that Professor Lanre used all the techniques he taught us. The parcel techniques, he did exactly that. So please, can we put in our best emojis, put in the celebration emoji, just say thank you, sir. Thank you for the wealth of wisdom that you shared with us. I trust that these few minutes can actually, like the last quote he put, that sitting on the table and having a conversation with a wise man can actually take away the time you spend reading books. I believe that this conversation, this webinar, has enlightened our minds and taught us a whole lot about the rudiments of communication. Right from even the practical session that we had, I was laughing from my end because I was like, what is going on? I expected something different, but I believe Professor Lanre brought a new game changer to play. So please, can we put in our best emojis? Can we celebrate Professor Lanre for his wealth of experience, for choosing to spend this evening with us? I mean, he could as well be doing something else, but he chose to be here today. Trust me, this is what people pay tons of money to get, but we are getting it on a platter. We really appreciate your time, sir. I trust that we would have questions, so please do well to put in your questions in the comments. I will be taking note of that so that we would have a floor where we get to ask Professor Lanre our questions. While that is going on, I would love to read out some announcements. Firstly, this webinar is recorded, so we'll share the recording with each and every one of us. And for those that were not able to attend the webinar due to one engagement or the other, the recording will be made available. And also, this is a series. Please, if you're excited that this is a series, can you put in the celebration emojis in the comments? This is a series. So this is the first of many. There will be a lot more to come, because we know how important communication is to foster our day-to-day living, both from your office space to communicating with your neighbor, your roommates, your parents, because I have seen children that cannot have proper communication with their parents. So we know that communication is very important. And this is a series. So get ready. Fasten your seatbelts. You're going to be learning a whole lot more about communication, speaking to people, and fostering your network. Now, remember to stay on this Telegram channel. This is very important. Professor Lanre usually sends us YouTube videos, sends us podcast link for us to listen, because we know that one class cannot do justice to everything. So there is a session for us to learn more and know more. So please remain on this Telegram channel so that you're one of the first people to receive information when Professor Lanre has another webinar coming up. So do well to remain on this Telegram channel. Send the link to your friends. You know that they need to be here. And I'm sure that this evening was not a waste of time. So do not hold this link. Communicate, pass it around, send it, share it. If you haven't taken a screenshot, please do well to take a screenshot now. Post it on your WhatsApp status, on your Instagram, and just write hashtag the art of conversation. Do well to tag Professor Lanre. Please do well to tag him, and just write what was your favorite part of this webinar when you're doing that. So when you use the hashtag the art of conversation, write what your favorite part of the event was, what is your key takeaway, and do well to tag Professor Lanre. You can create a post on LinkedIn about it, create a post, tell people what your favorite part of this event was, so that other people who are willing to learn and enhance their communication skills can also be a part of this. You do not want to hoard such vital information. I'm also going to be sending the link to Professor Lanre's website, where you can access other resources alongside the link to his latest podcast. So please do well to watch the comments. I will be sending that immediately after the event so that you don't have to shuffle through to find that information. So you can do well to see his podcast. There are other episodes there of past recordings. So do well to check it out, listen to it, and immerse yourself with his own wealth of experience. Remember, if I had seen further, it's by standing on the shoulders of those who have gone ahead of me. So you have to listen to this information. Trust when I say that Professor Lanre is a wealth of information and experience. So on this note, I will be checking the comments to see if anyone has any question that they would love Professor Lanre to throw more light on or answer. So please, if you haven't put your question in the comments, you can do well to do that now. Okay, I can't see any question at the moment. So please, if you have any question, I would love if we can write it out, or you could raise your hand so that we know that you have a question. Okay, I have seen a question. I'm going to read this out immediately. AY is asking, how do you handle conversations where the person is putting you on the pedestal, usually by making a comparison with your life and theirs? So I think this is a play of what happened between Professor Lanre and our dear volunteer. So sir, the person is asking, how do you handle such conversations? So please, while Professor Lanre will be answering this question, I would love if you have any other question, just put it. Okay, Ayomide, please, can you do well to write out your question? We will be waiting for you. While that is ongoing, sir, I don't know if you would wait for all the questions to come in, or would you be answering as they are coming in?
Okay, maybe I can just answer this one so that okay, while the others come in, and then you can just take them all together.
Okay, sir.
Okay, so that's a very interesting one. There is one way to handle it. And you recall I mentioned maturity. Maturity is when you don't put yourself in a position where you argue with somebody else. The moment the person starts to compare, number one, you can tactically change the conversation. Number two, you can tactically end the conversation. Or number three, if you feel that you have that level of maturity, agree with the person. By the time I say that, you see, I believe that I am more successful than you are. And I say, do you know, I actually agree with you. And everything you say, I say, I agree with you. There is no argument. At the end of the day, it cannot go any further. That person will have to stop. Because the reason they are doing it is to rub it off. I mean, to make you feel bad and to make you feel offended, to hurt your feelings. So the moment they don't get that effect, there is a possibility they just let it go. But in case you cannot handle it to that level, just tactically end the conversation and tactically conclude it. One of the ways to end a conversation that is not cordial or good enough, particularly when you're standing, is to start to shift your body weight away from that conversation. You don't move abruptly. With every word you're saying, you are shifting gradually, turning away. Psychologically, the conversation is coming to an end. Or if you are sitting, just start to pick up your things gradually as you are speaking to the person. There's a signal that is showing this conversation is wrapping up. So this is where non-verbal cues can be very, very useful. I think that can be helpful depending on the kind of person you're speaking with. So thanks for that question.
Thank you, sir, for that warm response. Okay. So, sir, this person is asking, how do you handle conversations with people who are clearly not interested, but you have to have that conversation? That's the first question. And the person also asks, how do you handle difficult conversations? For example, breakup, telling someone that they have body odor, or basically conversations that have a high potential of hurting the other person's self-esteem. So the first is, how do you handle a conversation where the person is clearly not interested, but you have to have that conversation? And then the second is, how do you handle the seemingly difficult conversation that has to do with it may or may not hurt that person's self-esteem, depending on how the person receives the conversation or the question or the statement?
All right. Thank you very much. Conversations can be very, very sensitive. In the case where the other person does not want to have the conversation, but it is a necessity as far as you are concerned, you have to understand that conversation takes two. So basically, you cannot force people into having a conversation they don't want to have. For one thing, you can't make them stay if they can walk away. For another thing, that they stay does not mean that they are paying attention to you. Their minds can wander. So this is where your own responsibility comes in. You know this conversation is important, and you know that you want to have it, and they are not interested. You have to find a way of connecting that conversation with something that matters to them, because you need to get their attention. It is not a conversation when you are the only one speaking. It becomes a monologue. So there is no way around it. You'll have to find a way they understand, or something that they are interested in. For instance, they may not be interested in the issue itself, but the consequence of that issue can affect them. So you begin with the consequence by making them see that this is the challenge that is likely to come. Now, having seen this challenge, let us discuss what this is. So that is one way to help to get that conversation done. But another way is just to be persistent, not be forceful, all right? If today the conversation cannot take place, tomorrow let the conversation take place. But just mind the time. You have to be sensitive to timing. There is a place and there is a time for some certain kind of conversations. So you don't just start a conversation just because you feel it is necessary. You have to time every conversation and be sure that it is well presented. The next one is talking about difficult conversations like a breakup. These conversations have to be hard. So it must begin with your mind. Number one, it is a difficult thing to break up, but you still have to look at it from the positive perspective. Don't be too afraid of having the conversation to get to the point where you are breaking up with a text. It destroys relationships. When you got into the relationship, you sat down to have a conversation. If the relationship is not working, I am sure it did not happen overnight. Both of you have been seeing signs. So you must be able to sit down and have that conversation again. Emotions may fly around, it may run high. But one thing you will decide is that no matter what happens in this conversation, I will stay calm. I'll stay calm. I'll still calm. Now, talking about a sensitive thing like somebody having body odor, I believe that when it comes to sensitive conversations like that, sometimes there is a kind of person that shares that kind of information. For instance, if it is somebody you are not so close to, but you perceive this, you may find someone who can interact with that person on a level, the personal level. Because if an outsider should just walk up to someone and say, do you know that you stink? That can really, really be heartbreaking. But if a closer person can explain it the way that person can understand, it works. So the next thing you have to ask is that this conversation, do I have to have it? It's a necessary conversation, but must it be me? Can I interact with somebody else who is in a better position to share this information? And if you are the one that is in the best position to share it, please do. The reason is this. If you see a colleague that has oil stain on their shirt, and you feel that I don't want to hurt their feelings, and you don't say anything, and they walk around the office, walk around the school, walk around everywhere, just to discover it themselves at night. Imagine the trauma. Imagine the pain. Imagine them thinking through all the places they have been and thinking about everybody seeing the stain. Now imagine what they are thinking about the so-called friends who saw it and did not warn them. So when you think about the consequence of not having conversations, sometimes it is better to have them. So I think that this will be very helpful. Thank you for those questions.
Thank you so much, sir, for your response. So while you were speaking, we had some other questions come in. The first question is, how do you balance professionalism and authenticity while speaking to an audience so it doesn't seem like you're a different person? The second question says, listening is a great part of conversations. But what if the conversation goes on with a party who is more centered on listening to the other party's ideas rather than contributing to the whole conversation? What can be done to balance the conversation? And then someone else is asking, how well can I use apologies in a conversation in a bid to improve my skills that will not be misunderstood as weakness? So, sir, I think we should start with these three questions so that I don't overload you with questions. There are some other questions still coming in, but I will reiterate the first three I read so that you can give a response to that before I continue. So the first is how to balance professionalism and authenticity while speaking to an audience so it doesn't seem like you're a different person. The second is listening is a great part of conversation, but what if the conversation goes on with a party who is more centered on listening to the other party's ideas rather than contributing to the whole conversation? What can you do to balance such conversation? And then the last is asking, how well can I use apologies in the conversation so that I do not come off as someone who is weak, and so that in a bid to improve my skills so that the person is not misunderstood or seen as weakness? How often should I use apologies in a conversation?
Thank you very much for those questions. So the first one, how can you be professional and still be authentic? You see, when it comes to speaking, professionalism has to do with the way you package yourself, with the rules you follow. Basically, professionalism is about rules. It's about comportment. It's about rules of engagement, how you operate under some different levels. Authenticity is letting your personality ride on those rules. Where you will become not authentic is if we never heard you speak with any phonetic intonation before, and now you're standing before the audience and all of a sudden you're sounding like somebody that just came back from the US. Then we know that, come on now, you concocted that, you created that accent for our sake. Now that is a case that is not authentic. But you see, just make sure that you don't do anything that is outside your personality, but subject your personality to the rules of presentation. which also now means, please, that professionalism is not only on stage. Professionalism is in life. So you package your life in a professional way so that whatever else you do, it doesn't seem as though you are living a double life. Now, does that mean that you are uptight all the time? Now, come on now. There are times when you are formal. There are times when you are informal. But make sure that your general conduct at work, in the office, in school and all of that, conforms to a professional conduct, so that when you stand before people, it doesn't look too far from what they know. Don't forget, your personality must ride on the rules that guide professionalism. The next one is about listening. It is true that listening is priceless. But you see, listening must be mutual. In other words, you take turn to listen. I'm speaking. I take turn to listen. You're speaking. So when it becomes one-sided, where only one person is speaking, it becomes a challenge. So particularly when you notice that you are trying to create a conversation, but the other person is not responding, I think this is the point where you ask yourself, is this conversation heading anywhere? Is there mutual interest? Because conversation is always revolving around common interest. So if you are not interested in the same thing, then perhaps the conversation should not be going on. But if it has to do with somebody just getting your idea and not sharing it, there is a way you can get the person to respond and say, okay, you know what? I have said this, I have said this. Can you tell me what you think about it? What do you think can work in this idea? What do you think will not work? Do you think that this is the best we can do? Can you just share your own thought about this? So basically, you have to draw the person out with questions. This is very important, particularly if you find yourself in a team where some people listen all the time and some people do most of the talking. Interestingly, the fact that they listen does not mean they have no idea. It may just be confidence matter or any other thing. So you have to be patient enough to draw out the experience from them by asking questions. And the next one talks about apology. Now, please listen to me. Apology must be used carefully. All right? You must use apology sparingly. If you are not at fault, don't apologize. I am sorry must not be part of your regular statement. Some people begin almost every statement with, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Can you pass that book? I'm sorry. Can I say something? I'm sorry. I have a question. You are living an apologetic life unnecessarily. You apologize when you've done something wrong. That is why in corporate environments, you don't just say sorry for anything. Customers complain about something. Before you say we are sorry, it is because you have discovered that we are at fault. If you say we are sorry, whereas it is the customer that's at fault, the customer capitalized on it. They know they did something wrong. In fact, they apologized. So you can say things like, I'm concerned that this situation is happening. All right? I'm worried that this situation is happening. Not I am sorry that this situation is happening. So there are ways you can express yourself and not necessarily apologize. Now, is it bad to apologize? Please, no. When you do something wrong and you know you're wrong, don't play around it. Please go ahead and apologize. But in case you are not, don't make it a habit to say, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. It does make the person feel weak. All right? Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. So I'm seeing we have 4 other questions, and I believe that those are the last because I can't see any other person typing.
Wonderful.
So the first question is, how do you give constructive criticism to someone who is in a higher position, let's say in the workforce, in a way that it does not give a sense of disrespect or assumptions of downplaying such person's intelligence? So this person is speaking as someone who is going on internship, and it's possible to use efficient wordplay techniques to draw out information from someone who would be termed shut off or silent. So I think the question is on how to give constructive criticism to someone who is in a higher position in your workplace, so that it doesn't look like you're being disrespectful or assuming to downplay the person's intelligence. And another person is asking, how do you know or tell that someone is interested in a conversation? How can you tell that, oh, this person is interested or this person is tired of this conversation? Another person asks, when you have a conversation with someone and the person is always about himself, how do you balance the conversation? And finally, in networking, how do you deal with being shy and to stand your ground to have a conversation with someone? So I'll reiterate the question again. The first person is asking about constructive criticism in the workplace, and you're giving it to someone who is in a higher position, so that what you're saying doesn't come off as being disrespectful or downplaying the person's intelligence. The other person is asking, how do you know or tell that someone is interested in having a conversation with you? The other question says, how do you balance a conversation when the person you're speaking to is always about him or herself? And finally, when networking, how do you avoid being shy? And how do you stand your ground when you want to have a conversation with someone?
All right. Thank you very much. Good questions. Talking about constructive criticism, please understand that when you're giving criticism, it has to be based on discretion. You have to understand the nature of the person you're giving criticism to. Because I recall that the Bible says that when you correct a fool, I'm not calling anybody a fool here, I'm referring to the Bible, that they will turn around and hate you for it. So basically, you have to understand that there are some people that are very open and appreciate ideas when it comes. And there are some people that are close up. So basically, you have to first of all study the personality of the person you want to give constructive criticism to. But one way I have found to work is to create scenario. All right? Create a scenario and say, please, under this circumstance, what should be the action? A lot of times, while the person is explaining it, the person is seeing the real situation. Most likely, unless the person is ignorant, the person is likely to tell you what should be done. And in the process, that person should review the action and take it. I have seen it work a number of times. So basically, you may be in a position where you cannot tell your boss what to do, but you can create a situation and present it so that the person thinks through answering that question and the conclusion is their own. So that when they draw the conclusion, it's almost like it is their decision, but you have put them in a position where they can make that decision. But if your problem is claiming credit, I am the one that corrected him, I made him know he was wrong and he changed his mind, then you have a problem. Forget about credit. Focus on getting the right thing done. All right. And when the right thing is done, it is good. Now, you will rise in your career when you get to the point where you can claim credit. But at that point, when you are growing in your career, just give your ideas and let things work and work well. The next one is talking about knowing when somebody is interested in the communication. This is where you learn both the verbal and the non-verbal cue. When somebody is interested in the conversation, there is a high likelihood that the person is giving you the attention, looking at you. When someone is not interested, the person is looking here, looking there, looking everywhere. The moment you notice they are distracted, just know that their mind is not in the conversation. When someone is in the conversation, there is a possibility that their body is tilted towards you because they are engaged in what you're saying. When they are not interested, they may be tilted away from you. And that is clear. You can tell from the facial expression if somebody is blank, if somebody understands, or somebody really does not care. When you notice things like that, sometimes it is better to just end the conversation and not keep it going. Otherwise, the conversation is one-sided. So basically, as you're having the conversation, you are studying the entire makeup of the person. Please don't stare, all right? Don't make anybody feel uncomfortable. But you're just paying attention. You're observant. You're taking note of the person's tone and all of that. That works. Now, talking about someone who is always talking about himself, it sounds like somebody who wants to have a conversation with himself. So basically, I don't know how you want to balance that conversation, unless it's a conversation that is necessary, that you must have. For instance, you're working with your boss, or or you're working with a superior, and the person is always talking about his achievement and what he has done, how he's the one running the office, you have no other option than to listen. But as much as you can, as the opportunity comes, focus on the reason for being in that conversation. Sorry, sir. So about this task, how exactly am I supposed to do it? Okay, so what step do I take? So that helps to direct attention back to the work. Don't do it in a rude way that will make the person feel upset. But if it is in a non-essential conversation, please conclude the conversation. It's obvious that the person feels more comfortable with himself or herself, and you are completely out of the loop. So don't put yourself in a position where you have that conversation. You have a choice. Talking about somebody who's shy, in the case of networking, don't forget we mentioned that conversation starts with the mind. So you must be in a place in your mind where you are comfortable enough to interact with people. Shyness has nothing to do with your physique. Shyness has nothing to do with your ability. It has nothing to do with your capability. It has nothing to do with your skill and competence. It has to do with the way you perceive yourself. You are withdrawn in your mind, all right? You feel for whatever reason that you cannot connect. So which means that it has to start with the mind. It is not at the network event that it begins. You must start before that time to make yourself understand that I am valuable. If I am networking, it's because I have something to share. This is not pride. This is self-awareness that if I don't have anything to share, there is no point networking. So I have a right to be in this room, just like any other person. And the interesting thing is this. You are the one that thinks people are looking at you in a particular way they did not notice. So you have to get to the point where you are comfortable with yourself before you enter an event like that. So please begin with your mind and let it flow into every aspect of your life. Now, I believe I've answered the final question. Before I hand over to Mirabel Chioma to conclude, can I please ask everyone to help me appreciate her for doing such an excellent job? She has handled the program so well. And if you're talking about professionalism, I think she has demonstrated it today. So please, can you just now use your emojis and anyone that you have. Don't skip any back. Please appreciate her for me. She's done an excellent job. So thank you very much. You're much appreciated. God bless you.
Thank you so much, sir. I sincerely appreciate. Sorry, I'm going to ask one last question.
Just a minute, please.
Okay, sir.
Just a minute, please. Before I let you ask your question, let me also appreciate everyone. Okay, you know what? Let me answer your question first so that I can just appreciate everyone that's been out here this night. Yes, please go on.
Okay, sir. So the person said, is it possible to use efficient wordplay techniques to draw out information from someone who would be termed shut off or silent? So can you use efficient wordplay techniques to draw out information from them? Is that professional? Is that right? And then another person asked, how exactly do you make a person interested in a conversation, especially females? I believe this is a guy asking this question. So I'll leave the floor to you.
All right. So efficient wordplay technique. Now, please understand that as much as you want to have a conversation with someone, there is nobody who likes to feel played. There is nobody who wants to feel that I am being being used. Somebody is using technique on me. So you have to be very careful. All right. Please be as authentic, be as genuine as possible. Don't use any unprofessional way to get people to have conversations with you, particularly when it is non-essential. Conversation is not by force. So you should be able to manage that. So you don't have to, but perhaps under some specific circumstances you may, but please be as ethical as possible. Now, talking about having a conversation with a lady, particularly maybe somebody that is not interested, don't forget that conversation is about common interest. There has to be interest in that conversation. So, like I did in the demonstration, I went personal. You don't go personal with somebody you just met. For instance, now, leaving an event like this, and you want to strike a conversation with a person, you may start by saying, well, this is what I got from the session. How about you? And it's a common experience where you can say, okay, this was the part I found interesting. I found this funny. I found this. It's a casual conversation. So it is from casual that you move to something more serious. So basically, when you are thinking of having a long-term relationship with somebody, don't think of going from 0 to 100 miles in just 5 minutes. It is something you build over time. Today may just be hello, hi. Tomorrow may be how are you doing? Fine. How's your day? Great. And then the next one, you take it to the next level. But don't forget that when you want to start conversation with someone, it is better that you begin with common knowledge. So in other words, pick something from the environment we are in, something that is obvious, not something that requires memory, something that requires personal information. No, something from observation. So as you talk from observation, you start to get to opinion, you start to get to feeling, and then you start to move on from there. So it is gradual. But don't forget, you cannot have a conversation with somebody you are not first interested in. So get interested in that person, find out what the person is interested in, and then you can have an interesting conversation. So thank you very much for that. I thank everyone that has asked questions. And I want to thank everyone that's been part of the webinar today. It's been amazing that you came out today to be part of it. Thank you so much. I hope you're well. I hope that you've had a great time being part of it. So thank you so much for coming, and I deeply appreciate you. And again, to the anchor, thank you so much. God bless you. You have done an excellent job. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. And thank you to every participant. I sincerely appreciate the comment. Once again, Professor Larry, thank you so much. Thank you for choosing to allow us to learn from your wealth of experience on a platter. We didn't have to pay for it, and we sincerely appreciate it. I believe that everyone is leaving this room with a whole lot to ponder upon. Now, I know that it is one thing to come for webinars, it's one thing to go for events, get so motivated, write a whole lot, but then it's another thing to actually execute it. So what are you doing going forward? What new step are you taking? What new technique are you going to improve on in your conversation? We learned about the parcel technique. I hope we all are going to put that into practice so that it doesn't just stop here. It doesn't stop in your notes, but you actually put it into practice. So please, as much as we've written, let it become practical. Remember, if you've not taken screenshots from this webinar, please do well to take some. Post on your Instagram, post on your Telegram stories, your WhatsApp story, and please, alongside, share the Telegram channel link, because this is one of many. We are going to be having more sessions like this, and you do not want your friends and your networks to miss out of it. We have learned that communication is an exchange. It forms a big deal of our day-to-day lives, and then you obviously want the people around you, the people in your circle, to learn more about communication. This webinar is recorded, like I said earlier. So for those who were not here from the beginning of the webinar, Professor Lanre would be making the recording available to you so that you can look back at what we learned from the beginning up until now. And like I said, this is a series, so please watch out for more. Stay tuned to this Telegram channel so that you'll be one of the first people to hear when another episode is going to be out, when we are going to be having another live stream just like this. And I believe that we've learned a whole lot. There is a lot to ponder on just from this session. Also, I will be sending the link to Professor Lanre's website alongside the link to his podcast, so that we can also get to listen to some of his podcasts that he has shared prior to this event. Trust me, you're going to learn a whole lot. It's going to be a whole wealth of experience, trust me. You know, he told us during his slide, when he was presenting his slide, the last slide, which was one of my major highlights, he gave a quote. I can't quote it verbatim, but I'll reiterate what the quote was trying to explain. He said that if you're in a conversation with a wise man, sometimes it can shorten the amount of time you would have used spending years reading books. So we've learned from today, and he's going to be giving us, oh, thank you so much, sir. He said a single conversation across the table with a wise man is better than 10 years mere study of books. So you know that having a conversation can change a whole lot. It can give you a new paradigm shift. So he's giving us access to his podcast. Please do well to listen, and beyond listening, do well to execute. Even the Bible says, write the vision, make it plain that ye may run. So run that you may be able to obtain. So please, beyond listening, beyond writing visions, beyond writing what you would do after, let's do well to execute it. And I trust, and I can't wait to see our testimonies from this session. I can't wait to see us do big things, have better conversation, have proper communication, be able to express ourselves better, be able to tell people more about our ideas. So please do well, once we leave the call, do well to write your favorite part of this session. Just drop it in the comments so that when people come, they'll ask what exactly went on. Let people be interested to listen to the recording. So please do well to drop your favorite part. What stood out for you? What was your highlight of today's event? And on this note, I want to say thank you to each and every participant. Thank you for staying true to the end. We know that it's not the easiest to stay true to the end of a webinar because it's virtual. So thank you so much for joining in. Thank you for staying true to the end. And I hope you had an exciting time. My name is Chioma Mirabel Wodo. I am a professional events compere, and it's been a pleasure and an honor to be here today. Thank you, Professor Lanre, for sharing your time and your experience with us. We do not take it for granted, and we are grateful. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Good night, everyone. Thank you. God bless you. Thank you, Mirabel. Thank you, everyone.